Do you want me to start again?
Yes.
No, okay. So this report is based off of the DLEP proposals that include a completion of VFM across all financial years. So this covers 2021-22 and 22-23. And I'll be focusing on the key messages within the exec summary to pull out. So what we're trying to do in this report is we're required to be satisfied that the authority has made proper arrangements for securing economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in the use of its resources. We do not issue a conclusion or an opinion here, but where we do identify significant weakness, we will report by exception on that. And the key criteria that we look at are financial sustainability, governance, improving economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. So as a result of our procedures, we have identified a risk concerning the council's capacity to produce financial statements. So here we note that in 21-22 and 22-23, the authority has not been able to publish a statement of accounts by the target dates as required by the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015. And these issues have been discussed, I believe, previously with the Governance Risk and Audit Committee, where it was reported that delays are caused by staff shortages and the need to prioritize and focus on budget gaps. So this demonstrates the associated risk of non-compliance with key financial controls and the consequences of not having a fully resourced finance team to be able to provide services needed by the council. Then this issue is evidence of a weakness in proper arrangements and how the council ensures effective processes and systems are in place to ensure accurate and timely management information and supports its statutory financial reporting requirements, therefore resulting in a significant weakness. Elsewhere, taking as read, section 2 sets out the high level arrangements in the other areas where we have no other findings, and appendix A sets out the detailed arrangements, which are largely a roll forward of prior periods with updates for 21-22 and 22-23. So at that point, I will open to any questions on the report.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, please? I mean, one of my questions on that would be, is it not also true that audits have been delayed, external audits, because of the amounts that have been outstanding?
So there is an ongoing reset in the audit market, which has been partially impacted by the by the governmental elections. So there have been delays exacerbated by that and an expectation of a reset to bring us back to a point where we are working on current year audits. So looking at 23-24.
Okay, but you were talking about delays in the 2 years previous. And what I'm meaning is external audits haven't been able to be completed because there haven't been external auditors to do them.
Yeah, so that is part of the.
I'm not saying it's the full problem, but it's part of the problem.
It is part of the entire reset of the market that there have historically been resource constraints on the provision of external audit and on the overall delivery within the market, which has led to a situation overall.
Okay, thank you. Christopher.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I note you talk about the weaknesses, and I see that they're picked up as part of the internal audit as well. So I just wonder whether we actually talk about those in more detail at that stage of the agenda. Might be relevant, I think.
I think we need to talk about them at either or point. I don't mind which, but are we happy to take it at that point in the agenda? Lovely. It makes more sense. Lovely. So we're happy with that. Councillor Penfold, you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to come back on that point about the delay in external audit, I think that is a factor. It seems to me it's certainly been a factor at county, where I also sit as a member, and to that on that point, then I would assume that the delay in the 21-22, 22-23 here it's not an outlier. That's quite a common thing across local authorities.
So there are other councils in similar positions, but the regulations as they stand do require the publication of draft accounts in line with those timelines, regardless of the position. But there are other councils that have, yes, missed deadlines.
I think it would be fair to say there's a considerable number of other councils, wouldn't it?
That was the thrust of my question, really.
Not to put EY on the spot, but it's a fair comment. I
Yes,
believe.
and I think that is where the part of the resetting the market is coming from as well.
Can I ask, I have a question for the 151 officer, please, relating to this report and what has been said by Ernst & Young is have we still got staff shortages? Are we foreseeing problems with delivering these things on time in the future? I know we've recruited a new chief accountant, but
We have a lady that's still with us as an interim. She's been with us for some time and she is very experienced in closure of accounts, and that is essentially her area that she's sort of solely working on at the moment. We've got the 2021 signed off, the 21-22 completed, and she's working on the 22-23. And she'll remain with us. My plan is to keep her until we've got the 23-24 signed off in December by this committee. The auditors are due to come into us in October and she'll be leading on that. But we've also got now the added benefit of the chief technical accountant who has started with us on the 1st of July, and he is actually an ex-auditor from EY. So that is really good news, and they'll be working together to produce what I hope will be a really good, strong set of working papers and statement of accounts. In terms of audit, there won't be an audit of the outstanding 2 years, but there will be an audit of the opening balances to make sure that they are as reasonable and accurate as they would expect them to be. I assume that they will look at the 21-22 and 22-23 to see what sort of movements there've been and do some sort of assessment on the movement between the last signed off set and the 23-24. And that's the approach. The team itself, now we've got the chief technical accountant in, is fully resourced, but we're just keeping on. Her name's Tracy. We're just keeping Tracy on because of the work that she's done so far, and we'd like to continue with that. And she's very, very good in this area.
excellent. Okay, Councillor Cushing, you had another question.
Yes, following up on that point, given that the current financial projections are based on the non-signed off estimates we have for 21, 22 and 22, 23, what sort of level of risk would you say there is that those figures may be wrong and errors could fly up when external audit review those figures?
I think the risk for me, the biggest risk is around our collection fund accounting, because that has been heavily impacted by COVID, and because we account for those over 3 years, we sort of now just about got to the end of the impact of that. And so it's making sure that our estimates are realistic. So that for me is the biggest area of risk. In terms of everything else, I think the risk is quite small. We have our budget monitoring, so we know what level of reserves we're using throughout the year. And everything else is based on actuals. So it's just really our opening balances where the risk is. And my main concern there would be on the collection fund account. But Tracy is working on that. And she's very strong in that area as well. And we also use LG Future. So we've minimised the risk as much as we can in terms of having accurate figures there. But that is my biggest area of concern in terms of our estimates.
Follow that up, please. So thank you for that. If we're looking in terms of quantifying that risk, are we looking at potentially tens of thousands where it might be the range of the error, or in the realms of hundreds of thousands?
It would be the larger amount in terms of, because the scale of what we're dealing with in terms of business rates, we're talking a collection of millions and millions of pounds, then the risk is that we could be £1 million out, or you know, that is the level of risk that we could be talking about, but we've tried to mitigate that in terms of using a nationally recognised expert from LG Futures to help out and assess our figures and look at those, and she's done that for us. And also having Tracy, who knows how to account for the collection fund, but it is just this fluctuation that we've had over the past few years that is a real concern of mine.
Is that millions of pounds potentially in deficit, or could it work both ways?
Both ways, definitely both ways, yeah. Yeah.
As well, okay.
Yeah, you know, we're collecting 50 odd million or whatever a year in business rates and council tax. So the error or the inaccuracy would be a small percentage, but it amounts to quite a large amount of money, yeah.
I think it's quite interesting too, because this report talks about materiality. And that seemed to me like a high number. But then if you look at the amount of money that's, I'm just trying to remember which page it was on. Sorry? Oh, it's in the next report. Okay, I'll come on to that one then. Okay, so those were the main points for me. Anyone else got anything else they would like to raise? The only other thing was there was a comment in there about procurement, and I understand we are currently renewing our procurement strategy, and there will be training available for everyone on that once that comes out.
A question, please, just thinking about it, just looking at the timescales we've got for bottoming out 21, 22 and 22, 23, which I know in the report says sometime around about November. That is really on the cusp, if not well into the process for the next annual budgeting process. So is there a real risk there of something, a major discrepancy is highlighted that could have a really adverse impact on sort of the work in hand, to the point that suddenly I think the report says the council needs to find savings another 2.5 billion. There's a risk that suddenly we need to find a lot more than that in worst case scenario at short notice.
21, 22 is already completed, and we do have also, as well as sort of mitigating action, is that we have to complete the NNDR forms to central government. So our NNDR1 national non-domestic rates return is an estimate of the forthcoming year, but then we have to submit our NNDR3. So those are all figures that come off the revenue system, and that gives us a very good picture, quite an accurate picture of where we think we're going to be at the year end, and then in our estimate for the forthcoming year. So 21, 22, Tracy has definitely completed all the work on that. 22, 23, she's sort of finishing it off, so we're still well ahead of that time frame of getting them done for November, and we will need to be anyway to produce the 23, 24's accounts and provide the working papers for our external auditors for them to undertake the audit in October. There's always a risk, and we take what action we can to mitigate it. And as an authority, we're fairly we haven't got anything that would, I don't think, result in major adjustments. We don't have sort of trading companies or big joint ventures, or we're not doing anything strange with our investments or anything out of the ordinary. As I've said previously, it's sort of quite a boring set of accounts in terms of the content of it and the complexity. So I think that also helps in terms of reducing the level of risk and knowing that there shouldn't be anything unforeseen in there. But there is always a risk, isn't there? Yeah. But we do take as much action as we can to reduce that.
Thank you. Yes. So are we, Tina, if I may, on course in terms of timeline for our 23-24 accounts, or has there been a knock-on effect with staff working on the 21, 22, 22, 23? Has that had an impact on where we're headed?
What we did, so we've got Tracy dedicated to doing the ones that we're behind on. But in aspects that affect the 23-24, she's done those areas first. So now essentially she's working on pulling the actual statement of accounts together and then going through and sort of checking it up. So we've got our outturn position, which was reported to Cabinet. So that's the start of it. And we've adopted the approach of Tracy working on the backlog and then the accounts team carrying out a close down in the normal time frame, other than knowing that we wouldn't be able to publish a set of accounts by 31st of May because we didn't have opening balances. So I'm expecting that we'll have a set of accounts for the next month or two, well in advance of the October audit.
I think that's the key, isn't it? It's making sure that we get back on track.
Yeah.
And then we stay there once we're there. Jill.
Mine was just a comment rather than a question. Having sat on this committee for the last year, I would like to say that we are in a far, far better position than we were last year. And the comments that you have made today about achievements from where we were a year ago. And I think, we need to thank the department and yourself very much for the move forward.
Excellent.
Because the risks have been reduced by the hard work that the people have put in. Thank you.
Thank you. It's important to note that when progress is made, it's recognised. Excellent. We all happy? So I'm assuming we just need to note the report. So is everyone happy to note the report? And let's move on and pass over to you for report 2, please.
So the next report we are bringing today is our audit planning report for the 23-24 audit of the council. So I want to give some context here first, and I think this has already been discussed to some extent, but obviously it's nice to be talking about a current financial year, but you will see reference within the document in a few places to government proposals to clear the backlog in local audit and put the local audit system on a sustainable footing, and how this may change the work we perform, risks identified, and materiality levels. We're still waiting for those final determinations with the new government coming in. And as we know more, we will of course come back to the audit committee, provide updates and any revisions as necessary to the plan based on those final conclusions. We also note that the recovery phase will only work if all stakeholders in the system properly discharge their responsibilities. So within the report, we reference the Section 151 officer responsibilities and the PSAA statement of responsibilities in Appendix A. And this is included in all of our plans for 23-24 audits across all councils. And it clearly sets out what is expected of audited bodies in preparing their financial statements and the resulting auditor reporting where this is not done. Moving on from that, we set out our audit risks and areas of audit focus. I will take these areas as read, but I will pull out ones that are new in the current year, specifically with respect to the general ledger system change. So it's our understanding that the council has implemented a new finance system in late 22-23. And the finance system contains financial data that forms the basis of our accounting records and entries used to create the council's statement of accounts. So we will have to consider the migration of client data, even though this did occur in 22-23, as it has an impact going forward into 23-24. And then also with respect to the production and the publishing of the statement of accounts, as raised, there is 3 sets of accounts that need to be prepared, and that can apply pressure to a finance team and potentially have impacts on the overall ability to deliver those accounts in a timely manner at a high level of quality. We have provided workshops to assist the finance team in refreshing their approach to confirming our expectations of them for the audit process. And we will continue to monitor the position and amend our audit timeline accordingly through discussions with management to ensure we're delivering in the expected timelines. With respect to materiality, we have set our overall planning materiality, performance materiality, and the materiality we will test to. The reportable level is 69,000. So any differences that we identify above this amount would be brought to the committee for consideration. These are similar values and calculation methodology to the prior year, and our performance materiality is set at 50%, which reflects the risk exposure and our judgment on the level of audit differences expected. With respect to our audit scope, it covers our opinion of the financial statements, VFM work, and also our work on your whole of government account return. For VFM purposes, similar to what was discussed in the previous report, we're required to consider the proper arrangements on economy, efficiency, and effectiveness, and gather sufficient evidence for us to document our evaluation of those arrangements and report as required in our auditor's annual report. In terms of the timeline, we have included a provisional timeline in the audit, and this is dependent on the production of the 21-22 through to 23-24 accounts, and ultimately the government issuing their final conclusions and regulations to resolve the audit backlog. This has already been impacted, as previously mentioned, by the general election, so we're still dependent on their conclusions to fully lock down timelines. We have agreed with management a timetable to complete the audit by the 30th of November 2024, with on-site work, as previously mentioned, in October. With respect to the team, David Rigler has taken over as a partner, covering 21-22 onwards. And then with respect to new areas, just to draw to the committee's attention, the implementation of IFRS 16 is coming into play from April 1st, 2024, which requires all substantial leases to be accounted for using the acquisition approach and recognizing the rights acquired to use an asset. So there's nothing to report in the March 31st accounts at this stage. However, the officers should be acting now to assess the council's leasing positions and secure the required information to ensure that it's easier to be compliant with the code in 24-25. The other new thing in our 23-24 audit will be ISA 315. So this is a revision to our risk assessment procedures and has a significant impact as we take a substantive approach rather than a controls approach to the audit. So it introduces requirements to better understand the IT processes related to the IT applications of the authority, and we'll have additional discussions necessary to develop that understanding. Then finally, just with respect to NOCLAR in Appendix G, so just want to draw your attention here as it explains the responsibilities of management and the auditor. When we as the auditor become aware of information concerning an instance of non-compliance or suspected non-compliance with the laws and regulations, then we're required to obtain an understanding of the act and the circumstances in which it's occurred and the potential effect on the financial statements. From there, we have to evaluate the implications on other aspects of the audit, including our risk assessment, reliability of written representations, and take appropriate action in terms of the impact on the accounts. With that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask? Saul?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just going to page 45, one of the new risks, the general ledger system change that you've identified. Sorry if it's a basic question, but is the migration of client data, is that an electronic process or is that a human manual process, as it were, and does that affect the risk?
Generally speaking, it would be an electronic process nowadays, and so I'm not entirely sure how the council has approached it at this stage, but there are parallel system processes where you run both systems at the same time to make sure the functioning. Essentially, what we're looking for is to check that information that was in the old one at cutoff date appears in the new one at start date is the main focus for us.
So is that risk around technology, incompatible technology then, or technical failure?
Potentially, yes. So it's a risk that the information that is in the old system doesn't completely or accurately make it to the new system, which can then have a knock-on impact to your account. So if, for instance, on your balance sheet, which is carry forward financial information, if not everything gets pulled forward, you could potentially then have a balance sheet which is not materially correct.
So you would need in that case, a human check on that to ensure that the technology has
Yeah.
performed and what was there has come across.
Yeah.
So it does need to be.
Yeah, so
Look
we,
at.
what we'll do on our end is likely pull of system reports from the old system, pull of system reports from the new system, and then a comparison between those two for any differences is generally the key control. And normally it's also what we see councils do for their own sanity check of the system conversion as well.
Okay. So that's something we've obviously got in place to do, Tina.
Yeah, we did it when we migrated. We took the report from the system of the old balances. We, as you say, it was electronic upload into the new system. And then there was a thorough check of the amounts and the coding that it had gone, all the information had gone to the correct codes as well. So I mean, I can report to the committee that that was fine. We didn't have any problem at all with that, and 100% was transferred over accurately. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Does anyone else have any questions on this? So I have a question on Appendix B, please, on the fees. Which is page 80 in the report. I looked at this and I was kind of concerned because if somebody presented me with a bill like this to pay, I'd be saying, well, I'm not signing up to this until I know exactly what all these TBCs are. And hopefully, as you as our auditors would be wanting us to be asking these questions, because we don't want to be leaving an open-ended checkbook for you. Are there any kind of guidelines you can give us in advance, or any, you would expect ranges? Because I just think, only one number in that chart is a little concerning to me. In fact, more than a little concerning.
So here, I think I'm going to have to defer to David on his return. But he is happy to have a discussion separately with the chair on any questions that I am deferring.
Okay, no, that's fine. I think we'll make a note then that we'd like to discuss that more, because I appreciate, that a lot of it you won't know until you get into doing the work, and then you'll know where what you need to search on more. But I looked at that and I was like, I'm a little concerned there. Thank you. Okay, so that was one question. And when I look then at page 84, 85 onwards, and it says when to where, are we, you mentioned that there were some delays caused by the general election. Are we still planning that this is all going to be on time? Because it just sort of says to be confirmed again.
So we are working under the understanding that the previous views would continue forward. So we are expecting to complete the audit in the October-November timeframe. We do recognize that there is a new government in power and that there is the potential for revisiting of the letters that have gone out, the FRC consultations that have gone out. So it's acknowledging that there is that potential, that we are working on the basis that we are completing the audit to the November 30th timeline currently.
Okay. So at the moment, we should all assume that you'll be coming in as expected. Lovely. And I suppose there's a comment there to be made to our teams here about the importance of getting our papers ready on time. So, because some of those TBCs are, which is what we've talked about already, if we haven't got things ready, it could have a financial impact. Okay, I don't have any more questions on this report. Does anybody else? No? Then thank you very much indeed for taking the time to come and see us today with these reports. I think, again, this report is to be noted by the committee.
Chair, can I just point the committee towards page 62, where it does say, we request the Governance, Risk and Audit Committee confirm its understanding of and agreement to these materiality and reporting levels. I don't know if the committee wants to explicitly agree that.
Ah, yes, 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 yes. Sorry, my post-it had fallen off that page. Now I know why. So are we, everybody on that page? Is everybody happy that they understand what that means? Or we let this gentleman go? And are we happy to confirm our agreement to those?
I'm just assuming that's the standard for every other council that we make those percentages. So that basis, yes, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I personally find them high, but I asked that question in the pre-briefing and was told this is normal procedure, so.
Sorry, I'm paragraph in the middle of that page that said initial assessment facts that indicate that place errors on financial things. Sounds very conflicting. Is that formulate utterance sort of or is that information?
Have we got some evidence to back it up?
Errors like statements.
Thank you.
So it's something the sub paragraph in performance materialities, the third paragraph in the page where the third assessment.
They're sort of almost level with the yellow line for anyone's trying to find it.
Yeah, in the performance section.
Performance materiality.
So with partially standard wording, and unfortunately, I'm not fully versed in the prior year audit of the county to be able to comment on that. But there is a drive towards the 50% materiality on the basis of one, the opening ballots consideration and the reset of the market. So a lot of councils are moving towards that 50% rather than 75%. But in terms of the level of errors in prior periods, I would have to come back to the committee on that. As
I think we need somebody to come back to us really on that before actually we probably can agree this. Because for me, the way it's written implies there has been a lot. But where's the evidence for that? Because, you know, you could go away from this meeting thinking Armageddon's coming, as you said, and it's really not. And so I'd like to understand what is the truth of the situation.
When I initially read it, I thought it would probably be better if there were conditions there, you know, if there is evidence of.
Yeah, exactly.
That actually, clarity for them, that there are. Because it would be a devastating environment if that one actually did go through.
Yeah, I think we need to get clarity on that. Shall we? I'm trying to think because there may be something around needing that approved, comment approved for the audit. Is there something around that needing approved? Can we make it conditional on us on you know, accept on the basis that we receive the committee, not just me, but the committee receive an assurance about how that has been put together?
yep, yes, we can provide that.
Yep, if you can let us have that, please, as soon as, because that's, you know, if I was reading this as the man in the street, I'd be like, excuse me, what's going on in my council?
Just wonder if there's a slightly wider point as well, if that is a sort of a general statement that is used, then perhaps it ought not to be, because
It needs,
you know, it needs to be more focused on the particular circumstances of each council.
absolutely.
And obviously it's a worry if that is being used in all reports as a general thing. So that might be something for the auditors to think about.
Yes. Can you pass that back, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Do.
So can I ask, with that proviso that we all receive an understanding of exactly what is meant by that statement in advance of us saying yes to the piece in yellow at the bottom of the page, that we are prepared to accept. Can I ask for a seconder, please? Councillor Penfold, all those in favour? Thank you.
Chair, do you want to have that done by email rather than waiting around for the next?
Yes, by email, please. And as soon as possible, because we don't want to be holding up anything to do with the audits either. We'd be shooting ourselves in the foot. Right, thank you very much indeed for coming along and the work that has been done thus far. You are very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you would like to. Equally, if you have places to be, people to see, we completely understand. Thank you very much indeed. Right, so we move on to the internal audit progress and follow-up report, please. Thank you.
So this is our final progress report for the 23-24 activity. We've completed all the work that's been done for probably a few weeks now. You've got all the final executive summaries, 11 reports. So quite a lot for you to have read through. And you've also got an update on the outstanding recommendations as they are at the moment, which is 41 outstanding. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who would like to start here? Anyone got any questions they would like to put? Councillor Cushing?
I wrote down a number of questions as I went through. I mean, some of them obviously more material than others. If I just start on page number 102, it says the council is not consistently achieving its target timescale of 15 working days to respond to complaints. Do we know why that is, and is there remedial work being looked at that?
To officers to answer that question, I don't know whether the report in detail would say much about why that is.
Okay, we can note that and find out for an officer that would be fine.
I think that's important because
Yeah,
we-
I'd like to know the answer really, because I think obviously that's very customer centric
Absolutely.
area for that.
Either myself or between us, Tina and I will come back to you on that.
Thank you.
I can find that one now.
Reading my scribbles, Madam Chair. Others can pitch in, obviously, as they are.
I'll let you have another one, then I'll move around again. Come back to you.
If somebody have no-
We'd like to move by
Yeah.
page through this report.
Yeah.
Would that help? Okay. So I suppose on page 97, just on the introduction, I had a comment there. And it strikes me that I'm told that 41 is not a bad level to have. But equally, I'm not happy with the number of incomplete actions that there are within this report. And I have asked that action be taken to remedy that, particularly when I see something outstanding from 2020. So I think with committee, I don't know whether we need to write to officers or we just need to ask and get this done, but we need to be improving this. And if we can't have an action, if it's not completed, we need to know why, because there's several in here where there's no action against, no comment against it, latest response. And I don't find that acceptable.
If I may comment, actually that was a point I was going to pick up further on down in the report, but I think you're absolutely right. So I've been on the committee now for 5 years, along with Councillor Penfold. And when I first joined this, there were pages of it which gradually improved to the point actually it was very good, and it just feels now it's getting away again. And you're right, there should be no reason why this is a very good excuse for something to be on there for months.
There may be good reasons, but if there are good reasons, then we just need to know what they are so that we can satisfy ourselves that that is being addressed and we can make sure it's under control. How do can we ask officers if they can ask that this be addressed, please, as a matter of urgency by other officers? Appreciate it's not necessarily your department that is causing some of these.
That's a specific committee recommendation.
I think it should be a specific committee recommendation. Yes, please.
Chair, I find elsewhere that once ELT, whatever they, or ELT, CLTs, whatever the senior management team is called, that once they get behind this and start putting their kind of foot in and saying, come on, get on with this, that we see a lot of movement. So that might be worthwhile asking them to give everyone a nudge about this.
I think we need to. I think the whole point of audits are that they are learning exercises and we can make improvements from them. So I think we need to be doing that. Thank you. So you make that as a recommendation. We'll come back to recommendations at the end. Sorry. So then moving on to the report on page 4. Does anyone have anything? This is the page, so page 100 or 4 of this report. So
Question on the page is good practice notified. It says, albeit with missing functionalities planned for a future update. Do we know when that future update is and what the impact of that missing functionality is?
we're on page 100 of the overall pack, or page 4 of the report from yourselves, and we're in the bottom good practice identified, bottom right.
I think if you want more detail on that, we'll have to come back to you about that, because we only give you the exec summary. I don't have, because I can't connect to the system, I can't go and look at the full report, so I can't give you the detail. And I may have to go back to the auditors that they contracted to say what they were talking about there.
Was it about the functionality of the finance system? Yeah. Yeah, there is, for example, sorry about that. As part of the system that we bought, we've got a module for a fixed assets register, which we haven't yet implemented. We currently keep that on a spreadsheet, but it sounds as though Tracy's the only person that does anything. Tracy's actually wanting to take that forward, because at the previous council where she worked, she had used the Civica fixed asset module, and so is familiar with it. So she's going to do some testing for us, and we'll see if we can get that up and running. But again, no disrespect to the council, but it's got quite a small asset portfolio, and sometimes the amount of work that you have to put into maintaining that module outweighs the benefits that you get from using it, and that sometimes the spreadsheet can be better. So we'll do that assessment. We're sort of looking at our assets there. Again, they're sort of, we haven't got schools or academies or highways, or sort of complex, sort of the more complex assets that are more difficult to measure and value. Yes, that's one of the modules. There are various areas of the system that we're perhaps not using the full functionality of, but we do have the team that are sort of going down our list and picking things off. We're sort of making progress on that. We've met with Civica that probably about 2 or 3 months ago, where we discussed these modules and whether we want to take them on. Some of them we may choose not to implement, full stop, because, as I say, the benefits of using them are outweighed by the amount of work that you have to do to maintain them. So we have other methods of keeping the information.
Is there any functionality you think we make which could be used, which would have, say, cost saving benefits, which we're not tapping into at the moment, or don't we know what we don't know?
Well, the budget planner is one of the modules that we are looking at. Again, that's something that some councils use and others don't. And that would enable service managers, I think, to update their forecast directly onto the system if we got that set up. And that should achieve sort of efficiencies in time. The information will be held in one place rather than a spreadsheet and then the system. So there's always room for human error when you're transferring information or intervening as a human. We will look at all the modules that we've got. I mean, it's not to say that there's 10 modules that we haven't implemented. It's only probably 3 or 4, I think. Yeah, as time permits, really. We are looking at the budget planner one at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you. I think the question for me on this was under the key strategic findings. Weaknesses were evident with corporate project management governance arrangements and require prompt attention. And certainly this has been a historical problem for this council. We set up the CDU after we had this problem. And I wondered why the CDU, if this is where the problem lies, because I know that there have been changes in staffing to the CDU team, or whether it's something else that's going on with the system. But, I was just concerned when I read that. I see Councillor Shires has also got her hand up.
Just for context, if you look, the first paragraph of the key strategic findings and the first paragraph of the good practice identified overlap in that regard. So I was the portfolio holder for IT at the point this change was being made, and it was the IT team and the finance team officers who worked very closely together to bring this piece of software in, and I do want to give thanks to both of them because it was a very, very stressful period of change for everybody. But under the circumstances, the staffing levels and the hard deadline that was put in place, they worked really hard. So I wouldn't want to be going through that again, which is why the project management has changed overall, not specifically because of that, but it's a benefit of it changing. But the two paragraphs are interlinked, if that makes sense.
That's helpful. Thank you. I think it's just overall anything to do with corporate project management governance issues and arrangements. I just want to make sure they are as tight as they can be.
CLT have set up 3 boards. We've got our initial meetings over the coming weeks, and one of the boards was the major projects board. But I've spoken to Steve because we think there's more value in it being the projects board, and with that title we can then look to strengthen further the use of the project management framework, which I think is where the issue is, that projects are being conducted but they're not using this framework, which would ensure that they looked at everything that they need to. And so as the projects board, we aim to push that out and get service managers and anybody that's delivering on a project using the framework and then reporting back to this officer board in terms of progress, any issues. So we are hoping to strengthen this further and hopefully get it to where it needs to be to move out of that weaknesses box and into the good practice box next time round.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's what I clearly like to see that. Okay. It wasn't a comment about this particular finance. It was more projects overall, I think, that I was concerned about. Anybody else on project page 4? I think we've probably done page 4 to death. Page 5.
It does indicate that about a third of yes, the board should use the third paragraph from
Yep.
Party place 200 lines line out very for it's provided on this 2023 to the service of the resolution time. It seems rather high. And I just wondered whether similar something is taken after May this year, whether that would be similar or whether there is an improvement there. So if there's something
Thank you.
I think that would probably be down to the time of the sample, if I was to draw anything from that comment there, because of leave. You know, it's traditionally August. We have a lot of people on leave, and the IT people would be the same, taking their summer holidays with the children or doing whatever they like to do in summer. If it is something that is service critical, it would be addressed straight away. We wouldn't leave anything that would impact on service. This could be something as simple as my electronic signature isn't working on my emails properly, or, you know, we've not got any sort of context in terms of what these ones that didn't meet the resolution time are. So yeah, whilst it's a third, I think if we looked, delve deeper into it, we could find that it was partly due to leave, and then also we'd look at the types of issues that weren't resolved as well. But I think you'd find that there wasn't anything critical, and they do prioritise Cara as their AD, do prioritise the work in terms of those critical issues first.
Yeah, if I could add as well, this was reasonable assurance. So I'm assuming that there wasn't anything ultra critical there that wasn't met. But since this time, the IT team have been working on that aspect and making sure they're all cleared up.
Thank you. Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole, but just on that point of leave, presumably we do plan for that, and so that we stagger it and we don't have too many off in a team at one time. So you've got a minimum coverage, as it were, particularly at a time like that. I would have thought in July and August, when schools are off, families are at home, there may be more demand on services because there are more people at home. So just to have a reassurance that, you know, if for example there was a very large number of people away in a team, then we somehow make sure we cover that. We don't just sort of say, well, there's a big gap appeared because people are away. That probably wouldn't be.
As their AD, I'll certainly take that back and ensure that that is covered in the future. As Tina has mentioned, we haven't got the further information as to why there was that difficulty at that particular time. And I think that was some speculation as to that could well be the reason.
I think with it being reasonable assurance, you know, I think we can move on at this point. But if that were to change, and I really don't want it to change, but if it were to change, then I think we'd be asking for some investigation into what those incidents were. But I don't think it's worth not wasting time, but spending time on those at the moment. Happy to move on? Okay. Page 6. No. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9.
Very quick question, if I may, on page 9. The top one, key strategic findings, it said that the access to the digital mailroom found that 2 officers who have left still had access. I mean, that seems like normally when you leave, there's obviously a generic process that you go through to make sure people's all their security IDs is revoked. So is that I'm just hoping that's not the tip of the iceberg, or has that been sort of closed down and looked at by whichever officers are relevant for looking at things like that?
Yeah, I remember following up on this actually in terms of accessing. The IT team do regularly go through and look at who has access and do a review. But at the time when someone leaves, if they're not informed, then unfortunately, you know, it does require that the proper leaving process is followed in full for them to be informed. And so we've strengthened that in terms of having a form. So we make sure that we're collecting the lanyards, we're informing IT so that they can also take, deactivate the lanyards, etc. That sort of thing takes place. So we, and again with the finance system, that we are regularly updated with who's left as well, so that we can take access away from the finance system in terms of viewing. That happens across the council in terms of it should do in the leaving process. So I think we would hope that that has improved significantly, and if another sample was done, that wouldn't be found again.
That's fine, lovely, thank you.
So that page 10. Councillor Cushing.
That's already in place now. Our sort of technical accountant that deals with treasury management, and anybody that acts when he's not there, they know now that they can't undertake any investments or undertake any borrowing without prior authorisation from a senior officer. But firstly, our AD for finance, and then myself, and then if not, then they go to the group accountant. And we've now got Dan in place, so he'll be the first port of call from now on. Yeah, but we've already put that in place. Yeah.
That's good to know. Lovely, thank you. Page 11 is part of page 10, so I'm assuming that one is closed. Page 12. Okay. Page 110, or sorry, page 14. And those numbers. Andrew. Yeah, that's right. I jumped over.
There's quite a lot of writing for which says about property, making sure that
Could you use your microphone, please, Andrew? It's all right. Thank
I
you.
always forget to do that, sorry. It relates to one building anyway. Responsibility within the council for obtaining the annual statements from landlords about health and safety requires clarification. The outstanding statement for the sole lease property in North Walsham should be promptly obtained from Flagship Housing. I mean, what about progress on that? I mean, it does seem to be rather important, given that the problems with rental property are fairly widespread at the moment. I mean, should be promptly obtained, suggests that, it's pending, but it obviously would be quite urgent if it hasn't been done.
Anyone able to comment on that, or do we need to take that
That's
back?
probably too granular. Yeah, I mean,
Perhaps that's a question we could take away and ask for a written response for you. Okay, so then moving on to page 14 and 15. 16 and 17. Councillor Cushing.
I'll go to page 16, and the top business continuity plan is out of date. It says a revised version will be issued by June 2024. So I just wonder whether that actually been done.
We extended the deadline to the end of July. I can't think why we did now. I think it was because it was such a quick turnaround for everybody, and the elections had been announced, and that meant a lot of work for various people in the organisation. So we've got in place some workshops that are going to be running over the next couple of weeks for anybody that's new to this area, because I say some of them are so out of date that I suspect that the managers that now look after them have never done this work before. We're running those workshops, so we're planning the deadline date for everybody to get them all up to date is the 31st of July.
Yeah, and I've seen some bits and pieces that are floating around on the intranet. Talking about work being done on business continuity. Okay. Pages 18 and 19. And that brings us to the end of that, apart from the appendix. Don't have any comments. Andrew.
Basically deadlines, so it's each part. Sorry.
Which is that the top right of the page, it says that this is about receiving 40% of income from penalty charge notices. And it says that we're going to achieve this by the 30th of June, and I just wonder whether that had actually been achieved.
I think that's, well, A, there's that question, but B, that's sort of what relates to me saying about all these actions that are outstanding that we need to address.
Yes.
So could you, is anyone able to answer that specific question? But I mean, particularly when it's talking about revenue coming in, I want to know it's coming in.
I think the issue with it's not necessarily that it's inaccurate, it's just actually getting the information sometimes from Kings Lynn and West Norfolk. We do try to get the information, and it appears that if a more junior member of staff requests the information, it's not forthcoming and has to be chased, but I always get an immediate response, which I don't know whether that's a coincidence or not, but yeah, we do have a bit of an issue in terms of chasing, so then we can't then do our reconciliation to make sure that we're getting everything through. It is one of the things that we are looking for and looking at the moment in carrying out a service review of car parking, and whether we will actually continue with the service level agreement that we've got in place. So all of this is being taken into consideration, but we do try and do those reconciliations as soon as we get the information through.
I think it would be fair to say it's fairly important, because if we're paying for a service, just like if we paid for something at home, we would expect the service to be delivered. So. Councillor Penfold.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just on when you think about that sort of recommendation as well, there's quite a lot through the appendix in terms of latest responses. I won't read them all. The due date has been updated to the end of March 2024. It will be live by the end of March 2024. A different one. The completion date has been agreed as 31st of May 2024. So I think, you know, they're all the sort of intended to will be's. They're 3, 4, 5 months out now. So we need to have
And that's why I made the comment.
a much, you know, what's happened is that kind of intention it will be, and that sort of language is quite.
I think if
fluffy.
maybe we should say as a committee that if any aren't answered to, you know, satisfaction when the papers come out for the next committee, we invite those people to come along and explain to us what's going on. Can we put that down as an action that, you know, if they aren't satisfactory by the time the papers are issued, then can we ask those service managers to come to the meeting, please?
I think that can be the second point to that overall recommendation.
Yes.
Perhaps the committee gives you the authority to write to CLT saying we're not happy with these 41 recommendations, and the next stage is that.
Yeah. You know, you've got till the next committee meeting to start putting things in line and getting things updated. Are we all happy then with that report? And again, is that to note that report along with the recommendation? So can I have a second of the recommendation, please? Councillor Cushing, all those in favour? Thank you. It's unanimous. Okay, so we've got the Governance, Risk and Audit Committee. Head of Internal Audit's annual opinion report, please.
Yeah, so this is my annual opinion
on risk management, governance and internal control for you for 23-24. So my opinion is the report details is reasonable stroke limited, a split report opinion. And on page 135, I go through some of the control weaknesses that have been reflected in reaching my opinion. So I haven't placed any reliance on third-party assurances. The opinion is based on all the work that has been completed in the year and the progress with the outstanding recommendations. So the control weaknesses I detail there, the limited reports and the outstanding recommendations, I suggest should be considered in the AGS that is written by the council. That's one part of the report. I've tried to make the report a bit more readable and give you some pictures so you can easily see how many audits, how many recommendations and the different opinions that you've had throughout the year, just to break it up a little bit for you. And the final page, you've got the comparison of opinions that you've had over the years. So I think you can see that compared to last year, you have got less green, more kind of yellow and orange. So does it suggest a downward trajectory? It depends how you view that. And that's maybe why I've gone for the split opinion to say, you know, I think there are a few things here that need to be addressed where there are the weaknesses suggest some risks that need looking into. So I've gone for that split opinion to say, look, I think there's some improvement that is needed. The other side of the report is about the performance side of internal audit, which we have a contractor who completes the audits. And you can see their overall performance is amber, and they're not achieving perhaps a more operational side of their KPIs to deliver the terms of reference, if you like, the draft reports and the final reports. We also don't get much response on feedback when we send out the feedback surveys either. So that's something that we need to get officers to engage a bit more with that. But in terms of kind of what are we doing about this, we've had another team from the contractor picking up our Q1 audits. And so most of them are well on their way now, which has been good. A recent development is I've now got a new director of audit that's been assigned to me. So I'm hoping that might have an impact. We've got a protocol, a ways of working together document in place to help the officers who have audits know when to respond in timescales and escalations, so that when the auditors aren't getting the responses they need, there is a process now to escalate that and to call a halt to the audit if needs be. So some repercussions. And I'm hoping that the contractor will also give us another manager. One of our managers is kind of part-time, 3 days a week. And I think their portfolio of clients is maybe too big for that. And we could just do with another manager to pick up one of the councils that were within the portfolio, so that spreads the load across. And also we are looking at another contractor. They don't have the right to do all the audits in the contract. So I'm talking to someone at the moment about whether they could pick up some audits, and that would be good for the reprocurement process. If we engage with people along the way, then we should get more bids in when we get round to procuring, if you start to build up those relationships. So there's a few things going on there. And as for the survey, I think our survey is quite detailed and long. So I think we want to look at that and get that down to a few snappy questions that maybe we get the responses a bit quicker. And then if people write things on it, then we can have further conversations with them as need be. So that's what we're hoping. And then the other part of the report is the quality assurance and improvement programme. And the main thing to note there is normally we would do the self-assessment against internal auditing standards, but because the old standards have gone and we've got the new global standards in, which don't come into effect till January 25, we're in that kind of period where everyone's doing their gap analysis and seeing how do we apply with the global standards and putting their action plans in place. So I'm focusing on that rather than go back and self-assess against the standards that have gone out. The way we work hasn't fundamentally changed, so there's no reason to think that we wouldn't be in compliance if we did that. So at some point I'll be able to bring back a gap analysis
which will show you where we are with the new standards, and you can see what we need to do to move forward with that. In terms of the external quality assessment that we're required to have, we've recently had one in 22, so we're not due till 27. So there's nothing more to report on there. Happy to take any questions.
Lovely, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Cushing.
Thank you very much, Teresa, that's helpful. Given the pool that the councils that you work in, I'd be interested to know how North Norfolk compares to the other councils you audit. So if we look at page 8 and look at the 13 audits you've done, is that in the same ballpark? Are we better, or are there things we can learn from others? How do you feel we compare?
So I think I would say you're kind of in the middle. There's other councils who've got more positive opinions than you. And there's the other side. There are definitely councillors who've got more limited opinions than you. So you're kind of in that middle ground where along with one of the others, you've got 2 or 3 limited opinions. Everybody's done a lot of work to get their recommendations down. Some people had 100 outstanding recommendations, and with a bit of ELT support and push, they've managed to halve them. So everyone's getting around that 50 outstanding recommendations. There are a couple who've got 25, so really gone for it and cleared their backlog. So I would say you're in that middle of my councillors that I deal with. That helps.
I think that reinforces the point you've made, Madam Chair, about really perhaps getting the SLT to focus on these, ways to bring ours up to that top quartile. I think should be very helpful indeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for all the work and your attendance and help with everything here today. Much appreciated. Right.
Recommendations on page 1 to 5, which are essentially just noting the
Yep. So. What have you got there? So the committee is requested to receive and consider the contents of the annual opinion report. I think we've done that. Note that a reasonable limited audit opinion has been given in relation to the framework of governance, risk management and control for the year ending 31st of March 2024. Note that the opinions expressed together with significant matters arising from internal audit work and contained within this report should be given due consideration when developing and reviewing the audit's annual governance statement for 23-24, and note the outcomes of the internal audit's performance measures and the quality assurance and improvement programme. I am happy to propose those recommendations. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Boyle. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you. It's unanimous. Right. I believe we are now able to move on. Is that correct? GRAC self-assessment. So I think we still have a very, very limited response on this, don't we? Clearly you're scary enough, Councillor Cushing.
I think I was the only one who did it last time, but I got a gold merit badge.
But I still believe it's a very, very limited response we've had. I think, would it be fair to say it's been a limited response still?
Shall we name and shame? Put hands up. No.
Do we need to bring? Do we have any findings to report back from that?
What we've done is we've got the action plan, which is on page 164. So where we didn't have a 5, there's an action that's come out of it, which as a committee, you know, that this is your action plan.
Yeah.
So you need to follow that through. We've put some people against it. So we'll all do our bit. Those of us who are on the action plan, and then you monitor that through, and then hopefully everything gets addressed, and next time we get the fives, and we've got nothing else to do.
Everyone happy with that action plan?
Sorry, I didn't actually quite. Four.
So 4 people did it.
Okay.
From that, they have put together an action plan.
Yeah.
And we obviously need to make sure we do the action plan, and those others that are noted on there, we need to ensure they do their parts as well.
Who's defining the action plan, I ask?
The action plan's been put together by,
We
Oh.
did that. So where there
General
wasn't a
audit.
5 score, we pulled something out as an action in order to achieve it. So for example, where we said, oh, we don't think the terms of reference follow everything it should, then obviously there's an action to say, okay, well, terms of reference need revising to make sure it's got all the right bits in that it needs to have in. So that's how we've covered it off.
is everyone happy to accept that? Any questions or comments further? No, it looks like everyone is happy to accept the action plan. Thank you very much. We need to take a vote on that.
One recommendation, that's fine.
Okay. Corporate risk register. To consider a report from the council's Director of Resources on the council's corporate risk register, please. Is anyone going to speak on this?
Can we walk through it? Can we just?
Yes, of course. Okay. So one of the things, as we start to walk through it, one of the questions that I had from this was, I know CR 26 was removed or going to be removed. And I don't really feel very comfortable with that being removed, which was talking about the financial risks to the Council of the Economic Climate. And I sort of wanted to understand from the committee whether they were really happy with that to be removed, whether that had sort of slipped through because it was coming towards the end of a meeting.
Well, I think it was me, actually, I'm afraid, who actually suggested we do remove it on the basis that it's not really a risk, it's an assumption. That's the climate we live in, and that'll be the climate this council lives on until the probably.
But is it not?
I mean, and how's it ever going to change? I suppose that's my challenge on that.
Well, if we had a fair funding, if we had a funding review that gave the council stability, then the risk might be mitigated to some extent. Yeah, but the local government funding would then give us the protection against the,
It would give us a multi-year settlement rather
Yeah.
than yearly
if
settlement.
it gave us a multi-year settlement is what I'm trying to say.
Mm.
It would give us that slight protection.
I
I'm
guess,
not precious either way. I just
like
thought we
you,
should discuss it.
I'm not precious either particularly. I just sort of trying to say there's one less thing to report on, which I just assumed is more of an assumption than a risk, but again, not.
Councillor Boyle.
Yeah, I think I would err on the risk side of things rather than the assumption, I must admit, thinking about it.
Okay,
I think, yeah,
yes.
I would agree with that, yeah, for the time
You
being.
have-
I'm not over
No.
Okay. So then can we make sure we put that back in, because I think we put a note to take it out. Okay, so then let us turn to page 172 of the report. Anyone got any comments on that page? Medium-term financial plan.
I suppose my only, I mean, it's red. I'm surprised it's not redder, would be my question.
We were saving money on ink, councillor Cushing.
Yeah. I probably have it's 5 times 5, but there we go.
Anyone got an? I think it's one of those situations, isn't it? It is challenging for nearly every council around this country at the moment. Okay. Thank you. Page 173. Anyone got any comments on that one? Page 174,
Just
councillor Cushing.
the comment I had was the third, on the first column, the third comment down, enormous overspends to budgets. I'll just quantify what that actually means or refers to.
Is that something that we can talk about in public session? Or do we need to go to? If we want specific details, it may be something that we need to move into.
Wasn't proposed we go to if it's something to be done via email, then I'd rather do it that way and possibly close the session.
Point 3 on 174.
Yes, well, I mean, if we take any action, enforcement, the costs of taking that action are unknown when we decide to do so. And we don't specifically have a budget for it, so that they could be large overspends against a very small budget. That is the consequence, isn't it? But it's not always about the money in terms of these actions that we take in prosecutions, enforcement. There's usually a bigger issue at hand than necessarily how we fund the cost of taking that action. So there is a risk there, yeah.
Just the words enormous overspends sort of leaps out from the page really,
Yes.
and that word concern because I've never seen that before or aware of it. So I just wonder if any action needs to be taken in order to address that or
My interim AD has written this up, and so maybe it's just his terminology that, I mean, like you say, we've not seen enormous overspends written like that before. And it's, yeah, I mean, legal action, you know, it can cost, go into the tens of thousands and sometimes even more. But again, it's what issue you've got at hand, and we do consider the cost of taking action versus the need to take action, don't we? And whether we're taking action is the most appropriate course.
Maybe we could ask for some more information about that offline, because I mean, I think we all understand that, you know, particularly with planning issues and things like that, the budgets can go up and up because of, you know, how far legal action needs to be or enforcement action needs to be. And clearly it's a good thing if we are enforcing, because a lot of our residents want to see us taking a harder line on that. But there are financial consequences. So it'd be good to know a little bit more about those, I think. Yes, of course.
One issue that the council deals with is health and safety prosecutions. This often involves possibly someone who's been very badly injured, for example, and you may be prosecuting a company that has significant funds and people relating to that company as well. They are historically very long processes with a lot of paperwork, so the cost does go up considerably when you get something like that. It's very different to say a fly tipping prosecution.
And I think if we, you know, we can all probably think of those cases within the authority. Councillor Shires.
Sorry, just obviously I know that that is a consequence of the risk happening if it was to be a realised risk, and I understand that. The enormous overspend doesn't seem to be a financial term that we would generally use. From my perspective, that's something that we wouldn't have budgeted for. So perhaps it's the wording that's caused the alarm rather than the actual.
I think that's why we need some
detail.
information behind it, please. That would be useful for the committee. I was going to, yes, because I mean, what is enormous to one person isn't necessarily enormous to another. But the word is certainly alarming. Okay, are we happy with that? So we move on to page 175. 176. 177. 178. Councillor Cushing.
My only comment on that is looking at the rag rating on there, which given that we thought we came out of the EY audit, particularly around sort of the pressures in the finance team, whether that's undercooking it, it ought to be a bit higher than that. So the section 151 officer's got a view.
Yeah, this risk isn't one that I've personally had any involvement with. Yeah, I would expect to see it higher, to be honest, if I was asked to score it. And this has come from our new HR manager, so yeah, whether we have different scales again. We know we have difficulty in recruitment, as can be seen in finance and environmental health and planning. So you would expect it to be slightly higher because that is our target score. So I think we could review that for next time and just consider whether that's appropriate. It does seem a bit low, or yeah, not. I would have said it was an amber or a high green at least. I would have thought.
I think should we make a note that we'd like to ask the new head of HR to look at that and let us have some understanding of that, because I agree. I mean, we all know the difficulties we face, not just as this council, but all councils facing recruiting staff. So, I mean, I think by the look of what I can see there, it looks like they're saying that because our absent rates and turnover are less than the sector, that's having a strong implication on that reading, but I think we just need a bit more clarification. Okay, page 179. 180. 181.
Sorry, can I go back to one? So I might go to 180, and again, looking at the risk rating, we've got the local plan. We know we have challenges. We've had obviously challenges around nutrient neutrality, which is holding back significant elements of the local plan at the moment. We don't really still have any great resolution of that. Whether the new government will make it wave a magic wand, I don't know. But again, that looks, I wouldn't personally think it's green myself, but there we go, where we are at the moment. We've got developers across the district not being able to build any houses, and they won't be able to do so until something is done to address nutrient neutrality.
I mean, there are plans coming forward, aren't there? Ways to address nutrient neutrality. But like you say, it is green and it looks like it's going down, which is
where we are now. It may be heading in there may be hope for the future, but at the moment I just thought it wasn't green, but that's just my view.
How does the committee feel? Do we want to ask also for some more information around that? So we have with, okay, so can we also put a note that we'd like to ask for some more information around, like to better understand it, please. Page 181. I think we all understand the issues we face with climate change and with the repair works that need to go along on our coast. 182. 183. 184. 185. Okay, we haven't finished one yet. 186. 187.
If I could please, a 187. Having spoken to Officer Fortune, we still haven't got confirmation that the additional funding for the roundabout is coming through, as far as I'm aware, as you know. So given that we are now in July, and I think the start date of that is meant to be due on the 9th of September, I'd have thought that certainly isn't green at the moment. That must certainly be some risk around that. So that to me again looks low. By the time we reviewed, we'll probably know one way or the other, I suspect. But I think that's worthy of making a comment.
Yeah, perhaps this was updated prior to, I'm not sure when it would have been updated.
It would have been for our earlier meeting, probably.
Yeah, possibly, and so maybe the impact of the delay with the election may not have been factored in. Yeah, I mean, that's delayed everything, whether it carries on or whether it is actually stopped, doesn't it? So we do need to come back to that, I think.
It impacts the local plan as well,
Yes,
doesn't it?
yeah.
So
Well, and housing, I mean, the number of houses that will impact.
yes, exactly. 950. So
It's a big.
yeah. So I personally think that ought to be reviewed.
Yeah, I mean, early on in the year, if we'd been looking at this probably in March, April, we'd have been quite confident that it was going to go ahead. But like I said, now it's changed, hasn't it? So I don't think it probably is a green anymore, is it?
I don't think so.
No.
Can we put an action then on that one, please, for further clarification? Thank you. Page 188. 189. Yeah, yes, if the Heritage Action Zone is finished, can we not now close the risk? Oh, sorry, I'm looking at page 188, North Horsham High Street Action Zone.
Yeah, it is. It says it's closed, so
It
that
says it's closed. And it says close risk. Can we agree that, do we think that risk should be removed?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yep.
Lovely, thank you, everyone. Okay, so 189. Coastal management scheme again. Looking at those coastal management schemes, I know, Tina, I think you were asking whether we should have a climate risk added in.
We did have, yes, the officer that looks after sort of responsible for decarbonisation. There was a comment as to whether we should have something in there in terms of the risk around not meeting our target, and whether that is something that we wanted to include within the corporate risk register.
Councillor Boyle.
Would that be target date or target time? In terms of target, or it not being completed?
Well, we've said we'll be net zero by 2030, so it's just 6 years away now, isn't it? Whether our actions that we're taking now, whether that will impact. We've had 5 years, I think, in the report that went to committee. I think it went to overview scrutiny, if I remember correctly. We'd achieved about 47% over the first 5 years, but obviously the next 5 years we've sort of taken the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, and that the next 50% will be much harder to achieve. So the risk of not achieving that and what it will mean to us, because there will be fines to pay in terms of not being carbon neutral, won't there, come 2030?
Thank you. That does make, yeah, that does make sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
Does all the committee agree with that we should add that to the risk register? Everyone happy with that?
Or we just it in as 34, actually. We've got,
Apparently it's sort of. No, we're talking about we haven't got net zero target. We've got it in. It's here. Page 183.
oh, 183, yes.
So we can, yep, we jumped past it and
I think it's an additional one, Chair, in terms of the effect of climate change on the council and its buildings and how we actually prepare for that. I think was my understanding of it.
I think that's a bit,
I think we get into a really technical.
yes, it is. I get that, but
I wouldn't be comfortable at the moment with us having the knowledge as to how climate change will physically affect.
our buildings and our
Building,
assets
no.
and
I think that is something to think about, but potentially not. You know, we
Not
need some
yet.
briefing on that, not yet, and what that might look like going forward over the next 50 to 100 years, but
Yeah.
you know, that
I
is-
mean, certainly we're going to need something, but because of also our coastline and.
well, that's the
let's-
one area where there is obviously it's easier to
Yeah.
to measure.
Okay,
But we've got two separate things, and we've got the net zero risk at C30.034, and then we were on Burma monthly.
Yeah, I was kind of. I was thinking more in terms of the risk of the completion of the scheme. I thought we were on 036 at that point, and because we've had such rubbish weather and watching it on a daily basis, I do know that there are delays when there's a swell and one thing and another, which wouldn't normally happen this year, which would slightly increase the risk of completion dates. So that was where I was coming on with climate not being quite what we expected. I'm not sure that it would change.
I think that's
we were doing.
is under the specific project though, isn't it? Yeah. I think. Is everyone else happy with that resting under that specific project? Okay,
You know, right, okay.
not at this time. Okay, sorry, going back, 'cause I jumped in with that one. So now, page 190. Councillor Cushing, I'm not surprised.
Indeed. If the risk is about the timeline, then that, I mean, Officer Hems, in his last steering group update for the Flash project already stated that that probably cannot now be achieved given the delays in getting the funding through, which is dependent on though the outgoing government minister signed it off, it then has to go to DLUC, whatever DLUC's been renamed now, for memorandum of understanding to be signed, and that was scheduled but was postponed because of the general election. I think there's a wider risk there of, will the funding actually come through? Hopefully that's a low risk, but that certainly is a risk, I think. So I think my suggestion is that is rewritten to not just look at the timeline, but look at the funding itself. I think the RAG ratings ought to be amended to be at least on the amber area.
I think that's a very reasonable. We just, none of us know what is going to happen there, do we?
Yeah.
It is the delay, but Christmas is absolutely right. It's the funding.
Yeah,
That's
we just,
critical.
no one knows what they're going to do.
So I think that does need to factor in.
Yeah, so I do, yes. So can we put a comment against that needs urgent review, please? Thank you. Page 191. And that brings us to the end. Okay. So we have several recommendations.
I've got 7 potential changes. I don't know if you want me to go through all of them or are you happy for, I may have recorded them.
Can you just read them out for us? Because I think the committee need to know what they're voting on.
Yes.
Thank you.
CR 026 going back in. The economic fluctuations, more information about enormous overspend. You for next time.
Sorry, Neil, could you put your microphone on, please?
Sorry, my apologies. CR 026, the economic fluctuation going back in. More information regarding the item on page 174, which is the enormous overspends. So that's the prosecution and enforcement action. Review for next time in terms of 178, which was the people resources and workforce development. More information on CRO 35, which is page 180. And again on page 187 on about the Fakenham New roundabout. Take out 187.
So there's-
got that wrong, haven't I?
Yeah, we've got to take
I've got
out
that
the
out.
north, so page 188 is the
Yeah.
takeout.
Yes. Page
033.
Yeah. And then review the risk on say Fakenham Leisure and Sports Hub.
Yeah, page 190. Need to review. Okay. So do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, councillor Boyle. All those in favour of those notations? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Lovely. So now we move to the procurement exemptions register. Cara.
Thank you. Every GRAC meeting, I'm required to inform the committee of exemptions granted. That's exemptions from our usual procurement rules. And each period follows from the last. So the previous period, 3 exemptions were reported. And in this current period, there's 4 exemptions reported. And I've put details in regard to those and the exemption used on the item.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments they would like to make on those? So can we just note that report? Thank you very much. We note that report. And then we move to, I think, Cara, it's you again. Let me just check. Yes, an appointment of an independent member. So you're going to give us an update.
Yes, a verbal update. The committee previously considered whether it would like to have an independent person. It's not yet law that we have to have one, but the committee did vote that they would like one. I haven't put out for recruitment at this stage, but made some inquiries with another authority to see whether they would be interested in sharing an independent person. And I've also, I also have a meeting set up later this week, I believe it is, with a group of monitoring officers around Norfolk to consider that issue there with a view to possibly recruiting a pool to give us greater resilience. So that's just my verbal update. It might not be something that members would be interested in, or they may be interested in me finding information out about that, or perhaps you would just like me to continue to recruit just for North Norfolk. I would mention, and I don't know whether it would be difficult, but I'm very aware that one of the main reasons for us having an independent person is to have that expertise brought into the committee. So someone with some accountancy background would be useful. And I'm very aware of the difficulties that our finance department have had recruiting accountants and finance people. So wondered whether this might be an approach that you might wish to consider.
Thank you. I mean, on that point of recruiting, I think that's they're very, very different things to be recruiting for, aren't they? A permanent job and an independent person is much less time commitment and commitment altogether. So for me, as the chairman, I think it needs obviously somebody with the expertise as the priority, but I'm also concerned that it should be somebody that does understand a little bit about North Norfolk. But I don't know what the rest of you think. And I also said, I think that if we are going to recruit, there should be a cross-party representation in whether that's just for North Norfolk or whether that's across several councils, but there should be cross-party representation on that so that everyone is happy with the appointments. Councillor Blomfold.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Do you mean cross-party representation in terms of the recruitment process? That we agree that person at, you know, whether you and Christopher are involved in that as members of this committee in the interview or whatever it is?
Yeah, so generally it's during the interview process, isn't it?
Yeah, it would be similar to when we recruited independent persons at the Standards Committee, where we had a representative from each party.
Seems a very sensible way forward.
Is everybody happy with that? Councillor Cushing?
Yes, I certainly am. I'm being quite keen on the proposal. I think it's, when I checked my records, I think it's September last year where we agreed to actually recruit one. So we're 10 months down the line and we're still no further forward. So I think we ought to perhaps, you know, put our elbow, work to whatever and push it on a bit further, I think, because I think somebody like that could add a lot of value to this committee. And I think it's one of the really important committees on the council. It's important we do a job and we get somebody else to help us do that, improve our performance, well and good. Probably if not a lot of an extra additional cost either, I suspect. Yeah. So I think, when can we get an idea, Cara, about what you're proposing to do? Because I think anything any proposal you make, which might forward that, I think we'll probably enthusiastically embrace. So
I believe my meeting is at the very end of this week with other neighbouring monitoring officers. I don't know whether they would be interested in a pooling idea, but I could see what they thought and then write to the committee to see what you would wish, and then possibly go to just recruit one for us if they're not interested or not wishing to progress it quickly enough.
I think we need to move it onwards. So unless they're ready to start recruiting into a shared pool, I think we need to say, well, we might be happy to share later on and see if we can recruit somebody that would be happy to work across. I don't know what. Okay.
if I have a memory, does one of the other councils already have one or two of these? I had a memory
Yeah.
might.
Yeah, we have approached to see if we could look at sharing someone else's, but it hasn't been fruitful.
We do a county as well, so I'm also on the governance committee there, and so I think there are two actually. So I don't know whether you've spoken to county about that and to take some advice maybe from them, or whether we can even speak to those independent members there.
Okay, so I think we have a plan.
Can I just confirm? So I am going to have the meeting on Friday, but if it's not ready to go ahead at pace, then we're just going to proceed and try to recruit
to North Norfolk?
Mm-hmm.
But within a view to sharing in the future if people want to. Happy to work collaboratively if we can. Thank you. Right, so it's just the work programmes. Neil, do you want to talk to us about these at all?
So I should very quickly mention item 15, which just picks up the recommendations from the previous committee, but I think they've all now gone through. So that's just for noting the committees.
Yes, they've gone through, haven't they? They went through cabinet on Monday, I believe.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
And then, yes, moving on to item 16, the work plan. I'm picking up the point within the internal audit action plan about having a look at agenda items. All I've done for the following ones is picked up the ones that have gone in the previous year and put them into the forward plan. And that one of the recommendations in that action plan for internal audit is to look at agenda items and consider them in terms of the core functions of council. And I wonder if there's an opportunity now for the committee to consider what sort of reports it would like to come to this committee in the future and what that process might be.
Does anyone have any ideas about that, or would anyone like to think about that before the next meeting so that we can bring forward some sensible suggestions of things we think we should be looking at that we maybe not?
I think it requires a bit of thought, don't you?
I mean, there are certain things, again, that I think I might like to see on there, but I think let's wait and see what everyone comes up with, and then we can put all our suggestions together and see what we think. Right. So I think there being no need to exclude press and public, this meeting can end at 5 to 4. Thank you all very much.